Hey guys, welcome to Critical Hit. I'm Kyle.
I'm David.
And I'm Matthew.
And today we're talking about Bravest Warriors. Bravest Warriors are a team of teenage heroes who, in the disappearance of their mentors and parents, the courageous battlers, have taken up the... Mantle? Kind of? They have a different...
Space mantle.
Of being the defenders of the galaxy.
Perfect.
The series is brought to us by Cartoon Hangover and has developed a really strong web presence, and they just finished their second season, so they're doing something right, so we're going to look at what's going on here.
Yeah, it's all on YouTube, too, so this is our first time we've had to look and discuss a web series.
What do you think about it, Matthew?
Okay, so this show is really interesting, because I'm a fan of Adventure Time, and so going from Adventure Time to Bravest Warriors, it's a bit of a jump. Bravest Warriors, not being on television, has some, I would say, liberties with that, and it's I would say for an older audience than Adventure Time is, and as a whole, I think it's pretty fun. It's a good ride that I've really enjoyed.
When I think of Adventure Time, though, I think of a show that's always been kind of pushing the envelope of what's okay to say on TV. Yeah. So you're saying that you think this is going even beyond that.
It feels less like it's pushing the envelope and more like the show's creators just can now write whatever they want to, as opposed to being held back by the standards of children's television.
In both cases, it seems like there's a really strong understanding of the medium and the demographic that they're dealing with, and you have that constantly in your mind when you're watching Adventure Time. Bravest Warriors, it seems to be more the case that they have an understanding of their freedom to do this, and they're so relaxed, and they're talking to the internet as the internet.
Yeah. At the same time, and it still doesn't feel gratuitous though. Like there's still actually elements. There's like a lot of innuendos and stuff, but there's elements of subtlety to it.
Well, the show has a lot of charm.
Yeah,
it certainly does.
Appreciation of this old timey adventure and goodness and fun.
Yeah,
and there's still a lot of those teenage elements, and then some darker tones that they shift in there. But it's this charming element that they don't want to push it too far. They don't want to get away from that and turn it into something like South Park, where it just becomes pure satire.
Yeah.
Pure adult.
Well, it is really just like, I mean, with Adventure Time, one of the things that made Adventure Time work is that it does take so many of those like fantasy tropes and then just puts that element of self-awareness, but still plays much of it straight. And I think Bravest Warriors really does the same thing with the kind of space opera environment. It gets pretty weird at some points. I mean, at times it even does feel more like a weird fantasy in space as opposed to just straight up sci-fi. But still, you have that issue where they're still working from a certain more traditional format.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is there what is it about this show that you guys love?
I think for me, like, what really got me attached to the show right away is characters. Like, as a storyteller, I focus mostly on characters. I think characters are the strength of a story. This show specializes in making all these minor characters that are really important and wonderful and weird or just gross or creepy, but they may only show up for like one episode or something, but they're still like really treasured. I don't know.
And that's not to say that the main characters like Chris and Beth aren't really good.
No,
they
but
are.
Impossible Bear is awesome. Like, you just let him say anything, anytime.
Gas-powered stick!
It's perfect. Like, you just, I love it. Or, what was it? Was it Robot Chris?
Oh gosh, Robo Chris.
Like, just creepy stuff like that. Or there's, like, some of my favorite ones are, I don't think they even have names, but they do, I'm sure. The show always has weird names for things. But the sentient fireflies, who can, like, read people's minds. And are instantly friends with everyone, because they just read their minds like, oh, you're a cool guy.
And things they have so many of them, and they come in and out so often, it just never gets old.
That's part of that show, the show's zaniness and that high-speed adventure thing that you really got a lot of in the first season.
I mean, one of the best parts of the show is the emotion lord, and just by his nature, he can just come and go completely randomly as he pleases.
Yeah, or the giant, like, all-loving jellyfish that floated through the sky and hangs out with Kappa. Like, there's just so many different, bizarre, weird creatures.
It's like, always been Wankersham.
Yeah, Wankersham. Gosh, it feels like Lewis Carroll wrote like the Star Wars planet Coruscant. Like, you have all these different creatures that just live together and experience like one another in such a bizarre, weird way that it's nonchalant and normal.
See, what I really like is the way that they introduce these minor characters, and then they do see that there is some amount of fan love for them, and they bring them back. Maybe not in the way that you want them to, but they bring them back. So my favorite to think about in this way is Jelly Kid,
yes.
who you see on the bus with them in that episode where they can't remember who they are or what they're doing, and he's just making toast there next to Daddy. and you don't see him after he jumps out the window for many episodes there.
Yeah.
And you finally see he's just randomly the guy that they end up saving in that one dungeon later on.
Oh, that's right.
That was just perfect. And then you have the horrific episode of Jellykid's death just a few episodes later.
By Catbug. Like,
by
Catbug of all people
Catbug
murders
offs Jellykid.
Yeah, it's just wrong.
Oh, man. And it's like, what are we supposed to think of these minor characters at that point? And they keep giving in.
There's so many of them, but it's not overwhelming. You're just like, well, it's cool. Okay, so that's a giant slug woman who's upset whenever anyone like eats her cooking or reminds her of her father. Like, that was weird, but now it's gone. Like, you just have these like moments where you just see this imagination that's just running wild and literally creating whatever it thinks of. And it just gives you the little snippets to see like how crazy the world these kids live in really is.
It's wonderful. It adds to the sense of adventure and oddity that is sci-fi.
Well, and it works so well with the main characters, because even though they have their own oddities and eccentricities, even with that, they're still essentially the straight men. Yeah. In the universe, they're the relatable ones, because even though they're kind of strange, what's around them is so much weirder that you can't help but latch on to them.
Yeah. And the things that kids do are also equally bizarre, but make kind of a sense in their own. It's like Wallow basically collects everything. like, oh, are you cute and sentient? I'm going to put you in my bedroom. Like that's how Wallow functions. And so you see like these scenes where like he's like sleeping and there's like 8 or 9 of these weird creatures
that we've seen in the past episodes.
And it's really cool. Or Beth's paralyzed horse, and their relationship is probably one of my favorite ones in the show, because that horse is awesome.
Blown away by the secrets of the universe.
It's just like you just have these moments where you have these like bizarre interactions that can only really work in this universe, and it works super well for this universe because they're bizarre. Like, it's a show that celebrates being bizarre, and you just kind of want to get on board with that and be like, yeah, I want my own Jellykid to instantly give me toast whenever I think of it.
Yeah.
Or Cat.
Well, who wouldn't?
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I just think that the strength in the show is how many wonderful, strange characters it has. All that being said, I still have some problems with Bravest Warriors. So season 1 was pretty phenomenal. It came out of nowhere. Cartoon Hangover just started off as its flagship. It just delivered this off the wall humor and concept, while also making these really well made characters. Season 2 starts off strong, especially with the battle between the worm and the paralyzed horse, and just perfect. But I would say the quality of the writing and the storytelling kind of falls, and it becomes almost like stereotypical instead of something special. It picks up again, but I do feel like there's this point where we had something special and it's fallen. And I don't know what exactly I can point the finger at for that, but for me, one thing I noticed in particular is an overemphasis on the audience's reception. So, for example, there's a side character named Catbug who everyone loves. There is no debate that everyone thinks Catbug's the coolest thing ever. And in the first season, he only shows up in a couple episodes, says something super adorable, like once or twice, and is gone. But in the second season, he has almost entire episodes dedicated to him. And it really feels like there's this shift in the storytelling where it's not so much them trying to craft their own world, but trying to adhere to what the audience wants. The audience wanted more Catbug, so let's put Catbug in every episode. But the problem with that is then Catbug doesn't become special anymore.
I think that this taps into one of the dangers of online storytelling, is that your audience is always going to let you know what they think.
Yeah, you can read the comments.
You can always read the comments, and if you disable comments, there will be a Reddit thing going on for you to see at some point. You can listen to your audience too much. You can play up the character who's meant for these bits, and sometimes those characters can make a good transition and become a more full character.
Sure.
But sometimes you'll lose what made that so brilliant, and you won't have it anymore because you've decided to amplify it because the audience keeps demanding more. And that's something to keep in mind when you're doing these web-based series, is that you can't just give the audience what they think they want.
Well, the question is how much do we listen to the audience when we tell our stories? Like, there's a sense to some point you have to listen to them because you want to, make money. You want to be successful in your storytelling and have something the audience wants. There's also another part of that where you have to make sure you're also adhering to telling a good story.
Sure.
And by good, I just mean at least well crafted.
I'm a huge fan of comic books, and you get this a lot in the comic book medium. People really, really like the one comic that they recently read, and then want everything to be based off of that version. Everything needs to be Wolverine now in all of X-Men, or else every Batman. Comic needs to be Blackest Night after that came out.
Right.
There's just this appreciation that happens in fandom.
Well, I think that there's almost kind of a hazard with being able to turn out content that quickly. Because I mean, when I think of like movies, because movies they take so long to make, there's a lot more time for the creators to like consider the plot elements. There's more times for fads to fade out, so the creators aren't held to that standard. And yet with the web series format, they can make it turn out so quickly. Yeah, it's a lot easier for them to fall victim to just trying to follow the fad of the show.
Yeah, these episodes are like 5 minutes, 7 minutes tops.
Exactly, yeah, which is one of the things that's allowed them to work so well as web episodes.
Yeah.
But it really, it kind of shows that, sort of haste makes waste kind of thing. It's like when you can make something too quickly, it also runs the real risk of cheapening it.
Yeah, it seems like that's the point when you get caught up in your own show and the fads at that point, and your show as a fad, you really run the risk of jumping the shark.
And it kind of, for me at least, loses the specialty of that fad. Like, I loved Catbug when he first came out, but now I don't care about him that much because everybody loves Catbug.
What's the thing, and even when they had more Catbug stuff, it wasn't as funny, even.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even so much, for me, I mean, it was overdone, but it wasn't even that it was overdone. It was even if they had just taken half of the Catbug lines out, what remains there just wasn't that funny or charming to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, not to brag on Catbug too much. I love Catbug, I love the jokes, and I think that they actually really... redeemed what they were doing by the end of season 2.
I think the end of season 2 is solid, and it's interesting because the show has decided to, instead of just become goofy episodic, where is our ragtag group of teenagers going this time, it's decided to say, no, let's actually make a plot out of this world, and let's develop a full, complicated story.
Yeah. If I may.
Well, I was going to say, although I think there are upsides and downsides to that, definitely. And that's what we got with Season 2.
Sure, honestly, I think that lag you were talking about there is really the product of them trying to turn it from just the episodic zaniness into an overarching story.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Because Bravest Warriors does a really good job contrasting that charming, adventurous feel with the dark and the kind of more creepy... borderline space cosmic horror elements there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with that, you need to constantly be giving little teasers to keep people in suspense and built, and they did a really good job of doing that and then paying you off really quickly in season 1.
Yeah.
But by the time you get to season 2, you can tell that they're working for a longer end game, a further off end game.
Yeah, and the payoffs they take longer and longer to the point that one of the main characters wasn't even in the season 2 finale.
Exactly.
Because he was off doing something else.
And so when you're doing this, you're building that tension the whole time there and giving more and more suspense, and it's emphasizing more of that longing and more of those darker tones without giving that immediate zaniness and adventure and just sheer good fun that most of the episodic stuff did to counteract or to balance out that.
Which I would say, for storytelling purposes, that's gutsy. Because they have changed their entire way of telling their stories from their first season to their second season. Because like you just said, instead of just being the episodic, here's what happened here, here's what happened here, and ending on a laugh, you now have these, no, this is a problem, it's going to connect here, and some of the episodes you're just like, well, I'm not comfortable where that ended. The season finale, you're just like, I don't know how I feel about
and
this.
one of my real fears is I'm just not sure if what they have so far with the format can handle that kind of that kind of narrative longevity. It's serious. I mean, I love this show a lot, but I mean, at the same time, it's the characterization is only being doled out in 5-minute increments. Are the characters strong enough that audiences are going to willing to stick with it? Season-long mysteries and season-long arcs the way they would be willing to with TV shows where the episodes are either 20 minutes long or 40 minutes long.
Well, should they up the time for season 3 then? Make 10-minute episodes?
I'm not sure if their budget can handle that, frankly. I'm not sure how much money they're making. But yeah, I think that would be a really good idea.
I think that might be a good way to go, but at the same time, you don't want to lose some of what made this show special back in season 1.
Yeah.
And I think one way to do that is with the minisodes that they do.
Yeah.
Because we think about how much everybody loved the Catbug Storytime Theater there
that was
episode.
perfect.
That was brilliant. And it was completely silly and ridiculous and had a lot of heart to it.
I don't know. I think one of the strengths Bravest Warriors has is having that short amount of time. There's no excuse you can really think of to not watch the entire series if you're interested in it, because each episode's only 5 minutes. You can just watch one in between whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube. It's free.
Yeah, so like it's one of, I would say, its strengths that I think it needs to keep. But the question is, how do you tell the kind of story you want to tell in that short amount of time?
Well, and part of what's made it able to succeed so much with the short running time is that it's so random.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, it's able to tell often a remarkably complicated story in 5 minutes because just random crap can happen and no one questions it because it's weird and it's comedic.
Yeah.
But I feel like if they make it more serious, they might sort of cut themselves off to being able to do that as much. Mm-hmm. Because when you have a more comedic plot, Deus Ex Machinas, they can happen, and it's basically okay. Mm-hmm. If you have a serious plot, that's deliberately what cheapens it. They really have to fight against making it all too serious. Or otherwise, I don't think it'll work with the format they have.
And you mentioned one of the negative sides is the expansion of Catbug into trying to fill up full episodes.
Yeah.
But in a way, I think it's not just the zaniness in the form of the series that allows for you to kind of continue in this way while introducing these topics. It's the characters, really. It's the setting. It's the reoccurring jokes that you can do without them becoming boring. And I think that if Adventure Time is any indicator, these people know what they're doing. They know how to introduce these ideas and not flatlining the series.
But at the same time, Adventure Time took a while to get to that point where it was able to deal with the more serious plot lines.
It took about a season or two, yeah.
Yeah, a season or two of
10-minute episodes.
Of 10-minute episodes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to sound too too pessimistic.
No.
But it seems like in a lot of ways, sort of the format is just kind of working against them.
Bravest Warriors really relied on getting an audience in the first season.
Yeah.
It made it very fun, cute, and successful. And it did succeed in that. And I now feel like what they're trying to do is they're trying to ask the audience to hold on to, as we go into season 2 and finish season 2, to trying to adjust to what we really want to do with the series. Mm-hmm. And we'll be able to expand upon that in the third season. It's just a question of if season 2 is worth holding on to that long. Like for me, unlike Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where I would say it's too little too late when things got awesome, with Bravest Warriors, I could say, yeah, season 2 wasn't my favorite thing, but I'll definitely watch season 3 because season 1 was so good, and I really trust it to get back to being that good.
And the seasons are so short in the first place, it isn't nearly as much of a waste of time.
Yeah,
if it ends up not being, if it ends up not panning out.
And it's not just the seasons, it's the episodes in these things. They're so short that if you have a bad episode, you can go, that wasn't so great.
I wasted
Move
5
on
minutes.
To the next one.
Darn. Like, everyone wastes 5 minutes
happens.
every day. That's no problem.
Yeah, let's see if the next one's better. In that way, the format actually does end up helping.
Yeah.
So there's pros and cons to this web-based storytelling, and this is a show that's it's done very well. We're trying to see where it's going to be going next, and I think they'll deliver. All right, guys. So any closing thoughts?
I've actually been waiting quite a while since the huge internet boom to see a web show that would really take advantage of the format, and I think this is really the first one I've seen. I think this is actually. I think that if this continues to do well and if it works well on both on a commercial success level and on a story level, I think we could see a lot of imitators, and I say that in a good way. And I think that this could very easily be something that in 20 years when the internet when internet shows are huge, everyone could look back at as sort of the beginning and as sort of the groundbreaking origin for this kind of setting and this kind of format, especially
for an animated series that looks this good.
Yeah.
For me, I really enjoy it. I think it's definitely worth your time, especially considering how short they are and how mostly wonderful it is.
Yeah.
The faults I have in the second season, they don't outweigh the wonderfulness of the other episodes. In fact, like the great, awesome scenes that you get in some of those episodes are worth any suffrage you'd get from these slow episodes.
Yeah, there really is. There's literally no reason as to why you should not just go and watch the entire series now.
Yeah, absolutely. And just I would just say, honestly, keep an eye on Cartoon Hangover as a whole, because their other stuff is pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
I just love to give a shout out to Being Puppy Cat, because that's awesome.
Right.
I'm really excited to see what they do with that.
I think that's one thing. Dave's talking about people are going to be mimicking this. It seems like this company is one that already knows that it's struck gold and is really trying to put out some new stuff. And I think Being Puppy Cat is something we can all look forward to.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I think just my closing thoughts is that it's an interesting concept in an interesting format. And that we need to celebrate both the bizarreness of the show and the interestingness of how do you tell such a grandiose story in 5 minutes. And how can we keep telling stories like it in 5 minutes?
For me, this series is zany, adventurous fun. I really enjoy the characters, and I expect more great things from it in the future. And I think that if Adventure Time is any sort of key to the success of this man and of his crew, we can be pretty certain that it's going to just keep getting better.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by, and join us next time.
You know what I'm saying to say? One peanut butter swear.